I'm joined now by former Labour advisor Paul Richards and former Conservative MP Louise Mensch, who's over in the United States of America. Louise, let me come to you first, if I can, only because I wonder whether you've ever seen anything like this. I mean, you were in Parliament a few years back. I mean, it seems like they've got nothing else to think about apart from a ceasefire in Gaza.
Well, unfortunately, I have seen scenes rather like this because John Bercow was the Speaker when I was in Parliament, and he put his thumb on the scale a lot of times. Now, I do just quickly want to say that I think Lindsay Hoyle is an excellent speaker. This is a rare cock-up by him, as you put it, but it definitely is a cock-up. Your viewers may, if I was translating this into normal people speak, I'd say it's a bit like Monty Python, where everybody sits around and goes, it's the Judean People's Front versus the People's Front of Judea.
Yes.
Splitters. You had three motions that are essentially the same, everybody calling for a form of a ceasefire. The reason that it's all gone slightly pear-shaped is that Lindsay Hoyle decided to take away the SNP's big moment. It was their opposition day, and do Labour a favour. How did he do Labour a favour? He let the MPs vote on Labour's motion, which if he hadn't have allowed that as a possibility, the Labour Party MPs would have been faced with an SNP motion and a Tory motion. They probably would have voted for the SNP motion, meaning a rebellion against Keir Starmer. So the charge against Lindsay is you helped Keir Starmer out of a jam. You made sure there wasn't a Labour rebellion. Frankly, I can kind of understand why the SNP are upset. He did take away their big day. On the other hand, I don't think the British public are going to be very impressed by watching a bunch of grown men and women fight about the precise wording of something everybody in the Commons agrees upon.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. Paul, let me ask you the same question, really, because it is being seen as Labour getting a bit of a let-off, but it may not be the case that actually that turns out to be right in the long run. But there's a certain irony, is there not, in the SNP getting up on their hind legs and complaining about procedures inside the House of Commons where they inevitably don't wish to be anyway.
Yes, and they're just playing pure politics with this. I mean, I would love to think this was an honest attempt to try and settle a very difficult issue in the Middle East. But it's not, is it? Because it was designed to embarrass Labour as part of the politics of Scotland.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of those SNP MPs are probably not going to even be there after the next election anyway. So it's pure politics. And their anger is because they didn't get the chance to split Labour down the middle. Because of the way the procedure works, and as simple as that, really.
Yeah.
So I just think it's, this is not about Gaza, this is not about ceasefires, this is about pure politics.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Louise, back to you. Unfortunately, it seems to me, I mean, I'm going to be speaking about this a little bit later on, but, you know, we've got a whole host of problems in this country. You know, we're taxed the most we've been taxed since the Second World War. You know, we can't keep people from coming to the country whether we want them here or not. We can't deport people from the country whether we want them here or not. We can't see a doctor. You wait 8 hours in an A&E for any kind of service that you want to get. And this has been an entirely wasted day for me on the vanity and virtue signalling of all these politicians who want to make a statement about a place where nobody cares what they think.
Yeah, it's true that nobody cares what they think. And later on in your show, you're going to talk about something really important, which is the fact that the Royal Navy is in trouble and that we've had misfiring of crucial national security missiles. Maybe we could concentrate a bit more on the funding for our armed forces, especially when NATO is under threat from Donald Trump, instead of having basically what amounts to a catfight, even if it is justified, about the precise wording of an agreed upon strategy, which is a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, get over yourselves.
Yeah. Well, as somebody said on talkTV earlier on this day, I've never heard of anything not a humanitarian ceasefire. You don't really have a sort of, a tricky and rather nasty, obnoxious ceasefire, do you? It doesn't really work. But, I mean, back to you, Paul. Is this really the end of the problem for Keir Starmer? I very much doubt it, because the more that the Palestinian cause is brought up... I mean, I came into work tonight. There's a Palestinian demonstration outside Southwark Council. I don't know what Southwark Council have done to upset the demonstrators, but almost every place in London you go, almost every street, there's people waving Palestine flags. We saw what happened to Rachel Reeves out on the stump the other day. Every Labour MP that goes anywhere is going to be asked what their policy is on Gaza, still.
Well, they're not being asked. They are being barracked. They're being picketed. They're being abused. There's some great sense of threat going on. And you say it's Palestine. It's not. It's not actual Palestinians, is it? It is sort of the woke Guardian reading.
Well, do you know,
classes
interesting
who
you say
hate
that. A
Labour.
lot of the Palestinian demonstrators are actually Palestinian, it turns out. You know, look at the 3 people who were convicted of wearing the parachutes on their backs. 2 of them were
the
Palestinian.
that I've had to walk through. I mean, the people blockading the SME for Labour gala dinner the other night, you know, were just the Corbynistas, basically, and the people that don't like Starmer and don't like Labour at all. And those are the backbone of the people now harassing Labour MPs and candidates. And any event we have now is going to have security right up to the election. But I have to say, you know, Labour's position is not going to be altered by a bunch of thugs outside shouting anti-Semitic slogans at us. You know, it will be a considered view based on the geopolitics of a party that might well be in government soon. So
well, you say that, Paul, but this positioning by Sir Keir Starmer today is, I'm told, the 5th different position that he's occupied. So, I mean, you say that you won't be influenced, but in fact, he's already been influenced, has he not?
Well, he's been influenced by events, I think. I don't think it's fair to say he's being influenced by Demo. He's a pretty resilient sort of bloke, but he has been.
He's known as Captain Flip-Flop, for heaven's sake. Paul, come on, he's known as Captain Flip-Flop.
The unfolding situation is what's informing his view. Plus, you know, you look around the world at our partners, our security partners, the Five Eyes nations and so on. They've shifted positions too as things have unfolded. You can't, you know, we had a leader last time round who hadn't changed his mind on anything since 1978. And he was rightly criticised for his intractability. This guy,
and he was also supported by Keir Starmer. He was also supported by Keir Starmer, Paul.
Well, to agree to that is true, I'm not sure. But certainly he's made a very clean break.
Well, he's admitted that he supported him because he wanted to get... Well, he's admitted he supported him because he wanted to get him elected. Nothing wrong with that. But let's not paint Keir Starmer as a man of great principle who never changes his mind just because he doesn't know what to do.
Well, if you look at what he's done to the party over the last 2 or 3 years, though, he kicked out most of the anti-Semites. He's completely transformed the economic policy. I mean,
apart from the 2 candidates in the recent by-election problems.
He's certainly trying to meet the electorate halfway, and you know, the opinion polls suggest that people are at least open to the idea of listening to Labour again after being afraid of it 3 or 4 years ago. So,
I mean, to be honest,
you know, he has shifted ground.
I think the people of Britain are willing to listen to anyone at this point, other than the Tories. Let's go back to Louise. Louise, the UN has been in the news as well this week because they've been under fire for a veto on the Gaza war. The UN is playing a kind of curious role in all of this, isn't it?
The UN, the world's biggest chocolate teapot, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely useless in every situation, designed to prevent wars. And what happens? It allows Russia to get away with everything and does absolutely nothing about the invasion of Ukraine, which, by the way, is the far more important war of the 2 that's going on right now. The UN are absolutely useless. Now, it is true that the United States did veto that resolution by the UN because I think, frankly, President Biden has had enough of Netanyahu being intractable and refusing to negotiate at all, even behind the scenes with the Americans. But at the end of the day, the Americans' patience is not inexhaustible. And if you look past the catfight that was going on today in the House of Commons, what's the real point? The real point is that all of the parties in the British Parliament say this needs to tone down now. We need to have some sort of a ceasefire, a pause, a break in the fighting to look at your strategy. Because Hamas have not been eradicated and tens of thousands of people are now dead. So at the very least, take a pause and see, is this strategy getting me to where I want to go? Which is the elimination of Hamas.
Yes, and that is the problem, isn't it? Because all these people who talk about a 2-state solution forget that Hamas don't want a 2-state solution. Netanyahu doesn't want one either. The only people who want them is everybody outside of the conflict.
You have to wonder what would happen if we said, bring us the head of Hamas, bring him out, put him out, deliver him to the IDF. And if they were to do that, because he's undoubtedly hiding somewhere in that region, would that be enough to end the war? You have to ask yourself, what is enough to end the war from Israel's point of view, and perhaps make them articulate what they see as victory. Define it.
Yes, indeed. And maybe, indeed, it's Qatar they should be talking to and Iran rather than actually anybody
Right,
else.
so I have often made the point that what they should really do is send some of those excellent IDF assassins out to Qatar to take out the trash.
Yeah, I think that would be a very good and welcome thing to do. Louise, thanks very much indeed. Back to you, Paul. I'm told 33 MPs have now signed a vote of no confidence in Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker. I don't know who they are. I haven't been given that information, but I imagine they will not be Labour MPs.
No, I don't suppose they are. And I think Lindsay will survive this because he's a very well-respected speaker and he has support across the House. So I don't think it's very fair to start blaming him. I laid the blame clearly with the SNP. You know, most people in this country care about the state of the NHS, not the state of Palestine. And the SNP have wasted a whole day of opposition day debate on this when we could be talking about much more important things.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think, and that's exactly what I was saying earlier, that, you know, the public are looking at this going, you know, I can't get a doctor's appointment. I can't get my cancer treatment sorted out. I cannot get the police to come to my house when I get burgled. I can't catch a train from point A to point B without it being delayed or cancelled. I can't walk down the main street of my town because there's too many bike lanes and cars parked everywhere. You know, the whole place is a shambles. And I think we ought to be doing better, shouldn't we?
Yes, and I mean the opposition parties get these opposition day debates, and they can choose the topic of what they want to talk about for hours. And the SNP decided to do this again. They've already done it once, and I'm pretty sure the people of Scotland have got other things on their mind as well as this. Obviously, international relations is important, but so is potholes, and so is jobs, and so is the NHS. And so when I said, you know, they're playing politics with this, that's what I mean. They chose the topic because they knew it would be embarrassing to their Labour opposition.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing at all to do with the Middle East.
Yeah, I think you find the people of Scotland aren't that keen on the SNP either. But listen, Paul Richards, thank you very much indeed. Louise Manch, great to see you. Thank you very much for both of you for your input on that. You're watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham.